everyone. I'm Ginny Schuster, and today my guest is Dr. Robert Saul. I am really excited to have him here. He's been a pediatrics doctor. He's written books. He's an educator. He's from Chicago area, went to college at Duke, and that's where he also taught.
I went to a variety of places. I grew up in the Chicago area.
Okay.
Went a couple years to Duke, graduated from a school at Colorado College in Colorado Springs, medical school in Denver, and then did my pediatric residency at Duke. And been in upstate South Carolina since 1979.
So you've gotten all around and met lots of little kids, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
So his concern that we want to get the message out there is conscientious parenting, which is the name of his book. And I'd love for you to give people some background, how you got so devoted into this, and talk about your book and what you're passionate about.
Sure. Yeah, my pleasure. And I thank you for having me on. And please call me Bob.
Okay. Thanks, Bob.
I finished my pediatric residency in 1979, and I was going to be the best darn doctor you could be. I'm actually both a pediatrician and a medical geneticist. I was very involved in my practice of medicine, but after 14 years, felt like I wasn't paying back to the community. That is, I had a chance as a professional to make a difference in the community. So at the same time, it's sort of fortuitous, at the same time, I heard a talk where somebody said, and this person was talking to healthcare system, for anything that happens in your community, 12 words: I am the problem, I am the solution, I am the resource.
Oh, wow.
So I need to think of everything as my problem if I want to make a difference. I need to be a part of the solution for those. And to do that, I need to devote my resources. So those words had a real impact, and it actually took me a couple months to internalize them, to figure out, okay, what do I do with those?
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to the community folks and said, put me in, coach, I'm ready. And I got involved, and maybe even smugly so, I'm a good person, I'm doing all these things. And then April 20, 1999, two teenagers walk into a high school in Littleton, Colorado, massacre 13 people and kill themselves. Unfortunately, sounds very familiar today. And yeah. that just had a profound impact on me. How could that happen in my community? Yes. What have I done to make a difference? Not enough. So I put pencil to paper and wrote an op-ed article to the local newspaper. We used to do that back then, pencil and paper. Right. And articulated what I considered to be the 5 steps to community improvement. And I'll get to those in just a minute. But then over the next 12, 13 years, I wrote over 160 op-ed articles to the local newspaper about all those steps. And then put that in my first book, My Children's Children, Raising Young Citizens in the Age of Columbine. And let me go through those 5 steps, because I think this is a lead in to what we're talking about in terms of conscious parenting and how I got there.
Okay.
Number 1, learn to be the best parent you could be. And I choose those words carefully because parenting is a constant learning experience. You're never done parenting. You're always learning. And the best parent you can be, not everyone has the same abilities. Not everyone has the same circumstances because of socioeconomic status, single parenthood, cancer in the family. There's just so many things that affect your ability to be the best parent you could be. So my job is not to tell people how to be a good parent. My job is to help enable them, to help empower them. Because early in my career, parents would come to me and say, what do I do here, doc? And of course, I was a young, idealistic pediatrician. I just got training. I knew what you're supposed to do. I just read the books. And I quickly, unfortunately not quickly, but over the 40 years of my career, I learned that my job was to help them gently peer behind the curtain and see what's going on, and see how I can help them in a trusted symbiotic relationship. How can I help you be the best parent you could be. Step number 2, get involved. I think that's so important. And I don't have a specific, this is what you should do or that is what you should do. Just get involved in your community, whether that's scouting, food kitchen, picking up litter, whatever. You need to get involved and be a part of what's happening, because that's what sets the example for your children.
Yep, good idea.
Number 3, stay involved. And that might sound related, and it is, but I think it's very different. Sometimes it's hard to sustain involvement, especially when change is around us. Change, they say the only thing that's inevitable is death and taxes. I think it's change is inevitable. And we just need to be willing to be a part of that and stay involved. Number 4 is the most intuitive, but the most difficult, I think, in our society right now: love for others. And we have this divisive society where people are shouting past each other and aren't listening to each other. And then number 5, I said 4 is the most difficult. I think 5 is actually the most difficult: forgiveness. I think we don't practice personal and communal forgiveness like we should. And for me, that's been a real journey, sort of learning how to do that. So those were the 5 steps that got me going on this path to where I am now. But I'll stop and let you ask any questions before I go on.
I love it. No, I'm totally with you on all those. I can envision it. And the forgiveness is really a hard one. You're right. I think of those 5, I'm going to take forgiveness is the toughest.
And if you haven't read it, in your listeners, the book Tuesdays with Maury by Mitch Albom.
Okay.
Is a fantastic little book. Mitch Albom was a reporter for the Detroit Free Press, was losing his moral compass in his early adulthood. He found out his prized professor was dying of amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, Lou Gehrig's disease, went to visit him, and he went to visit him on Tuesdays to sort of get life's lessons before Maury Schwartz died. But one of the quick takeaways is, in terms of forgiveness, is forgive yourself first, forgive others, and do it now.
Oh, wow.
And so you need to, and that's tough. I mean, because it keeps coming back. And, there's times when I'm sort of fall into the trap of not doing very well. I mean, my father was an alcoholic. We had lots of problems, and was an abusive husband. So there's times when I still have to take that deep breath and realize where I am in my journey.
Well, speaking of forgiveness, so my mind just popped to what you mentioned earlier, these school shootings. This is something that I think if I were a parent, I would just really have an absolute hard time with forgiveness. So that's where I see the biggest forgiveness happen.
You're right, but I think where we lose track of is these school shootings. These people are a part of a system, and we have not done well with the system. If this young man in Texas, obviously we have failed him in some way, shape, or form. I think of the two people in Littleton, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. And I remember that listening to the mother years later after just saying, I don't understand why my son did this, but in retrospect, there were signs. And in retrospect, we have, as a society, don't do well with recognizing those signs. We can blame it all on mental health, but that's not it. I mean, if we live in such a divisive society as we do now, when hate seems to be so rampant, when we just can't listen to each other, when we can't resolve conflicts, this is a breeding ground for this. So we might have a tough time forgiving the perpetrator, but in some ways we need to forgive ourselves for how we've screwed up and how we can do better.
Right. So you have also what pops in my head is fear versus love. In a way, it seems as though those two kind of fit here. that people are going around in fear because they see this happening. And so because with fear, people go inward and they're not looking outwardly to give love. And do you see that those two have anything to do with forgiving?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think we need, and so we need to sort of take a step back and say, okay, why, if I'm fearful of this, why? What has led to this? Let me use an example also of what what I think is communal forgiveness. We don't forgive ourselves or forgive our group very well. The American Medical Association, early, and I don't know when this was, did not allow Black physicians. About 15 plus years ago, you know, that changed, but 15 plus years ago, the leadership said, this isn't right. And it wasn't me, I didn't do this, but it was us. So they published an apology, a group apology, acknowledging what they had done. And again, what we tend to say, well, it wasn't me, I didn't do it, it was those bad people in the past. No, it's us. So we need to take some responsibility, some social responsibility, and we need to, if we, in this case, reset our moral compass. So we need to, as a society, look and say, if we're fearful of all these things, why? How do we do this? How can we reset and sort of reset our moral compass? And, you know, that sounds glib and easy to say, but I think that's the hard work that has to happen.
Well, from there, let's take a look at it. What does that mean? For me, my thoughts go to, well, get involved with the school board. Go to those meetings, see what's happening, see what your kids are being taught in schools. That's the activity that one of your, I don't know which number it was, but get involved was one of the things you said. And I think that that's a great way for people to see what's going on so that you can have an effect and be a good example to your kids.
Absolutely. And that actually is a great segue to conscious parenting, because one of the things that my first takeaway was with my first book was we've lost track of citizenship. Citizens take care of each other. Citizens care for each other. Citizens care about each other. And that's what we've lost track of in our society. And so as I've been on this journey, I got into this whole concept of conscious parenting, the most recent book. And how I got there was when I changed jobs late in my career to take a leadership position in pediatrics. I had to take another leadership course, and I rolled my eyes and said, okay. Okay, I guess I have.
Here we go again.
And you know, to simplify, their whole point of conscious leadership was just being conscious of where you are. There's a line, and when you're above the line, you're open, you're receptive, you're ready to learn. When you're below the line, you're closed, you're defensive, you're always right. And we've all been in that 3 o'clock meeting when we're just saying silently to ourselves, when's this thing going to be over? I am so bored. And the whole point of that is if you know you're below the line, now you can look and see how I can make a change. You can choose to stay below the line, and that's fine if you want to, or you can say, I'm not involved. How can I change my involvement? How can I change my involvement in terms of listening, talking, being engaged? Well, the more I thought about this is what parenting is all about, conscious parenting. And I said this line that they had, I called it the parental awareness threshold. When you're above the line, you're open, you're receptive, you're ready to learn. You're ready to be engaged and listen intently with your children. When you're below the line, you're closed, you're defensive, you're always right because I said so, because I'm a parent. And we're going to be above and below that threshold. I mean, we're human.
Right.
The point is with my conscious parenting model is just is a conscious awareness of where you are and a conscious awareness of where the child is developmentally. I think people have too many expectations. Children evolve, children change. What you expect out of a 2-year-old should be very different than a 6-year-old, 10-year-old, 16-year-old. So you, as a parent, you need to learn these developmental stages, and you need to learn about yourself because you need to take that you need to think of this model in the moment and in retrospect. Because if something's not going well behaviorally, and that's happened a lot in my journey as a parent, I say you need to, in the moment, you need to pause. You need to assess and then choose. A pause, assess the situation before you just knee-jerk a reaction and choose. Now, you might choose the wrong response. And hopefully in retrospect, if you chose the wrong response, you can come back and apologize.
You hit home with me. I've done that.
I'll give an example. I remember when my youngest son, we just went to his law school graduation this weekend. My youngest son was about 7 or 8, and he said something that really made me angry. And I just yelled at him. And he just melted. He just melted. And my wife got mad at me for yelling. And then we went into that family meltdown mode, where nobody talks and it just walks past each other.
Oh, yeah.
And then about 2 hours later, when the dust settled, and it was time to put him to bed, I laid down with him. I said, "Son, I'm so sorry. You did something I think was wrong, but Dad's response was totally out of line. And I want to apologize." And he said, "Dad, would you be quiet?" I said, "Why?" He said, "I hate it when you're nice." So, and I don't say that to pat myself on the back, but I like to think that I was thinking of this model decades ago. So I think it's so important, because the whole point of conscious parenting for me is raising your children to be good citizens. Now, a lot of times we tell our children we just want them to be happy. I think we have that backwards. I think what we want them to be is good citizens. And if they're good citizens, happiness is a blissful side effect of that.
Oh, huh. I like that way of thinking.
My parents divorced when I was about 9. And I remember my mother just saying, "Oh, Bob, I just want you to be happy." And I'm sure that's that parental guilt of all of a sudden. And my first marriage ended up in divorce. And I remember telling my oldest son, "I just want you to be happy." Fortunately for me, I did not follow my mother's words. I followed my mother's actions, that she was one of these beautiful people that would always care about other people and care for other people. And so I'd like to think that if I've done well, I've done well because I've followed her example and trying to be a good citizen, and the happiness that evolves from that.
I want to put this thought out to people. I know when I was raising my kids that one thing that really hit me was that we put people, and I don't mean to sound bad, but teachers, you put them on a pedestal, doctors, you put them on a pedestal. And what I realized was at one point, they're all human and they want to be talked to. So the example that is running through my head was in my son's 3rd grade. He got moved from one teacher to another teacher. And he'd always had excellent grades, but this new teacher only had him for a couple of weeks or something like that, and he got a C. And I walked in and I had, you have parent-teacher conference, and I said, "I don't understand this. He's never gotten a C." And what the teacher said back to me was, "Well, he's only been in my class for a couple of weeks and I don't really know him and he's quiet. So I gave him a C." And it hit me like, oh my goodness, well, I'm glad I spoke up, because the teacher gave him a higher grade. I forget whether it was you raised him to B or A. And have to understand everybody is busy. So it's really hard when you're working. If you're a single parent, you've got so much going on that you forget to get involved sometimes with your kids and their school. And same with doctors. When you go to see the doctors, they're looking for you to communicate with them and tell them, here's what I see. But I was a little bit intimidated for quite a while, thinking that, well, they know everything. What do I know? So once I did that, it made me realize it was easier to chat with them. And one time, the coach, my son wasn't playing, he was making mistakes. And every time he made a mistake on the court, the coach took him off. So I scooted over to the coach and I said, it's summertime and they're just practicing, having fun. Have you ever thought about letting them go ahead and make the mistakes? And the coach listened to me. Here I know nothing about coaching, and let him play. And he ended up being a star player in basketball in high school and all. There's so much that you don't think of as a parent. So I love the fact that you've come out with these ideas and this book about conscientious parenting, because there's so much for people to learn. You've never done this job before.
Yeah, and it's actually conscious parenting, not conscientious.
Oh, conscious. Thank you. Yeah.
But actually, it's both. You need to be conscientious as you're being conscious. So I'll give you that.
Oh, thank you.
No, you're right. And it's interesting, somebody asked me to write an article. I retired clinically from my career at the end of 2020. And at the last year and a half of my career, I got out of some of my administrative roles and just worked in a clinic that took care of children with very complex special health care needs, children that maybe had a ventilator tube in, or a feeding tube in, or significant intellectual disability or profound seizure problems. And I found the resilience of those children and those families to be remarkable. And it taught me to be a better person. And so as somebody asked me to write an article about sort of my career path, and I sort of said, well, whenever you finish an article for what you've done, you need to come up with what are some of the take-home lessons. And some of those are sort of what you're talking about. One is trust the intuition of the parents. They know more about their child than you do. You might know more professionally, and sometimes there might be a give and take here, but really trust the intuition of the parents. 2, listen intently. That is, listen. That's so hard in today's medical environment, where the doctors are in front of a computer having to input data instead of just with pencil and paper. And I found this to be very difficult myself. But listen. Number 3, smile. It's amazing what a smile can do in a room, and indicates your ability to share your humanity with other people.
Wow.
And remember your humanity. You could easily just be on the other side of that physician-patient relationship.
Yeah.
And as an aging person, I indeed have found myself on the exam table and on those. So I need to understand what people are going through, and just remember. What just amazes me sometimes, I hear people talk about how their mothers or fathers were treated by physicians, and they go, how do these people lose track of if this was their own mother or father? How would they not want them being treated? So
Yeah.
I got off there, but it's, you're right. I mean, it's so important that we listen, that we interact, that we be a part of everything that's going on with our children and with our families and with our society.
So where do you want to take this book and your avenue? What are your plans here and your goals?
That's a very good question. My efforts right now are fledgling, admittedly. I mean, I wrote this book, the Conscious Parenting book, came out in March 2020. And that, if that date sounds familiar, that's the onset of the pandemic. So, so basically nothing happened. All the things I had set up in terms of marketing and that sort of thing went kaplooey. So I found myself trying to work back, and then I was still busy clinically, and so I didn't want to short shrift what I was doing with taking care of patients. Now I'm still busy because for another couple months, I'm the president of the South Carolina chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics. So even though I've retired, I've not withdrawn in terms of my children's advocacy and citizenship. So I hope that I can get this message out to so many more people via probably a sort of a speaking forum, whether that's YouTube, whether that's in person. I continue my writings. I write a daily or a weekly blog. I have a new writing project on what really matters. So once my engagement from the my local chapter of the Academy of Pediatrics ends, I plan to get more involved in terms of what I can do to actively get the message out. I did not want to step on what I should be doing right now with what appeared to be my personal gain. But and it's hard as a physician to get out and promote yourself in a book. But I'm realizing that it's really not promoting myself. I'm promoting a message.
Right.
And damn it, I want that message out there because I think it's a useful one.
Well, I think you should do a TED Talk.
Well, I would love to.
Let's see how we can get you connected.
You know Ted?
I know. I should. That's my challenge there. You just set it up for me. But I have introduced you to a couple people who are speakers, and hopefully that will be a great avenue for you. And I would love for my listeners to reach out to you and connect with you that way. Tell me about a referral. Let's talk about that.
If you, my website has contact information on it.
Okay.
My website is www.mychildren'schildren.com. And I chose my children's children carefully because I'm advocating for my children's children. When I first wrote my first book, I had no grandchildren. Now I have two.
Oh,
my children's children, the children that I've cared for over the 4+ decades of my career, and my children's children, the children that I've advocated on behalf of. So pediatricians take a very maternalistic and paternalistic view of children. They're our children. And I used to think that was a bit presumptuous, but now I realize that's what we do. That's why we were put here, to do everything we can to help children.
And the thing I love about children is that they're so honest. When they make a statement, you go, "Whoa, you shouldn't say that."
Well, and if you don't learn from your children, you're not learning. And I used to say to all the medical students and the pediatric residents that I work with, if you're not humbled daily, you're not paying attention. And I think that's everything in life should be. And I think you could compress the time frame. If you're not humbled hourly, you're probably not paying attention to what's going on around you.
Yeah, life certainly has changed from my upbringing, where kids were to be seen and not heard. I'm sure there are some viewers who can associate with that.
Oh, absolutely. And that well, also in my generation was the incidence of a good whooping, and when a child had bad behavior. We now know that beating a child for whatever reason is wrong, and it says the wrong message. But some people say, you know, but my dad gave me a good whooping when I did that, and it taught me a lesson. I have a tough time with that because
Yeah.
it's just, you know, not everyone that smokes gets cancer, but it certainly increases your risk. Not everyone that gets physically abused as a child turns the tables, but it certainly increases their risk. So I don't want to take that chance in terms of what happens to children.
Well, that's true, but let's look at the other side. So you have to go to the middle of the road. They need that example to be set of good parenting, and yet they're always testing the borders. So in my opinion, yes, there doesn't have to be that abusive side from parents, but there has to be a guidance, and they do need to know boundaries. They're learning just as much as we are. And when I see that kids don't get any discipline, that's also not good for them. And there are ways that they can be disciplined without a belt or paddle or soap washing, you know, those things, castor oil. There are ways that you can discipline them in a good way.
Oh, absolutely. And I didn't mean to take, what I'm talking about is punishment. Discipline, absolutely. And sometimes that needs to be tough love in terms of,
Yeah,
just remember the root word for discipline is disciple, which means to teach. So
Wow.
any behavioral issue should be in a teaching, loving fashion. Now, that doesn't mean you have to smile and say,
right.
I really like what you do, but you don't hate your child. You might hate their behavior. And hate is still a strong word. I don't like that word. But you need to they absolutely need to have specific guidelines.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't mean by not physically punishing your children, you're you're being permissive and letting them do whatever the heck they want. No,
Right.
absolutely not. You're right. You want to discipline, loving, trusting discipline is crucial.
And I think that's an important point to get across to people. I felt guilty sometimes by doing discipline. And the way I kind of let go of that is by saying, you know, it's my job to do this. If I didn't tell you and you got out into the world and you hadn't been told, you were going to be mad at me.
Absolutely. And you know, it sometimes it's interesting how the circle of life comes around, because I said at the very beginning, you know, learn to be the best parent you could be. You're always parenting. I mean, as we get older now, we're parenting our parents. And I found this with my mother before she passed away, and had to make difficult decisions that she did not like
Oh, really?
on her behalf. So it was, you know, and you have to, so in some ways I was disciplining my mother, which she did not like. much,
Well,
much like,
paybacks.
much like children don't like the discipline from their parents, but it's what has to happen.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Are there any last words of wisdom that you have for our viewers?
I am the problem. I am the solution. I am the resource. Change the pronoun. We are the problem. We are the solution. We are the resource. So this disaster that occurred in Uvalde, that sort of got me involved in COLUMBINE in 1999, Sandy Hook in 2012, and all the intervening things. We have to consider that we are the problem. We are the solution. We are the resource. And forgiveness is going to be crucial as we go down this road.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining us today. All your words of wisdom. I would love for people to reach out to you. Conscious Parenting. Get that book on Amazon.
Correct.
And connect with Bob. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ginny. I've really enjoyed this.
Thank you. Please like, comment, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thank you again for joining me today.